All right. Welcome, everyone. Today we have UTSA's own Dr. Max Kilger presenting Black Hat, White Hat, Gray Hat, Red Hat, what Dr. Seuss forgot to tell you about computer hackers. Before we get to that, we do have a few short announcements and reminders to go through. Let's see. First of all, don't forget to sign in. ACM members get additional entries to our end of year drawing for each meeting that you attend. At the end of the year, we are going to have at least, and we may have more depending on how the budget looks, at least this one Ender 3 3D printer. So make sure you sign in for a chance to win that. For our meetings, if you have any questions, go ahead and click the Slido link in the description. This lets us track which questions have been answered. And, just remember, we're all here to learn. So don't be afraid to ask any questions that you have. Just submit them in there. We'll get to them. Give us money. If you haven't paid your ACM dues already, you can go to acmutsa.org/join and officially register. And of course, like I was saying before, paying members are qualified for those drawings. And additionally, we will have a shirt. I saw some mock-ups of our current shirt design, and it's looking really good. I think you guys are going to love it. I don't want to put Bryant on the spot, but I think we're going to have it for next meeting. We'll be able to show you guys what it's going to look like. And social media, you know the deal. We've got a bunch of social media places where you can follow us, but definitely join Discord. On Discord is where we do all of our social events. And I'm just starting to get good at Among Us. So if you guys want to jump on there, we can play some Among Us and have a lot of fun with that, or whatever else you guys are interested in. We've got a couple of upcoming events, of course. We've got our weekly meetings for ICPC. Many jobs have technical portions for their interviews. Coming to ICPC practice is a good way to solidify those skills and practice for those technical interviews. You can join. They have their own Discord server. You can join by scanning the QR code there. And recently, we actually got in touch with Southern University A&M, their ACM chapter, and they are having a new Relic come for an info session. They're going to be talking about their internship opportunities. As you can see listed here, there are a ton of different areas for internship opportunities with them. So definitely come to that meeting. That is going to be next Friday, October 16th from 2 to 3 via Zoom. The link for that is in our calendar on the website, and we'll also be sharing it out via Slack and Discord. Rowdy Creators. Rowdy Creators is our project-oriented subgroup. They meet every other Sunday from 3 to 5. Next meeting is in 11 days, October 18th. Definitely go and check them out. They also have their own Discord server for their projects. And Local Hack Day. So Local Hack Day is coming up on October 18th. I know it's Local Hack Day, but it's actually a week with a whole bunch of like daily themes for workshops. One day it's going to be just beginner-friendly stuff. Then there's going to be AI stuff and professional development and so on. They have a whole bunch of different themes. So it's definitely a great place to, be able to see a bunch of different workshops, earn points with our guild. We have a Rowdy Hacks guild that Trey set up for us, and scan the QR code there to sign up for that. And then, of course, our normal ACM ACM-W meetings on Monday. This Monday, we have Intro to Tech doing another basic CSS and HTML. So those are for making websites. So if you want to learn more about making websites and kind of the fundamentals, that'll be where to go. That'll be a good one to go to. ACM-W is having Google on the 20th. So not next week, but the week after. Google's coming. That meeting will not be recorded. So if you're interested in going to that one, make sure you attend live. That's Tuesday, the 20th at 5:15. That'll be on writing clean code. And then the day after that, on Wednesday, 5:15 again, we will have Valero Energy coming, and a couple of developers are going to be talking to us about recent projects they've worked on and talking about the development and enterprise architecture over there. And I talked about this one last time, but we're taking student feedback on these particular courses listed here. So if you have taken any of these courses, Computer Programming 2, Data Structures, Discrete Math, or Application Programming this year, spring, summer, or fall, please be sure to, we'll put the link in the chat. Please be sure to fill out that form. we're talking with the CS department and trying to find ways to improve the curriculum. So, whatever feedback you guys can provide for these courses, these are like key courses, we will, look over that and present it to the CS department and work with them to make sure, everybody's getting as good quality education as we possibly can in our CS department. And we do ask for ABC 1, 2, 3, but that's just for us to keep track of. We won't be actually sharing that with the department, so no need to worry about that. So that's everything. I am out of breath. So now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Dr. Max Kilger. If you want to go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Christopher. Let me go ahead and share my screen just to make sure. You cannot go. Yeah, all right. Well, let's try it again. There we go. And let's see, and I'm going to go here and there. Sure. Hi, so I'm Max Kilger, and I'm an associate professor of practice in the Information Systems and Cybersecurity Department here at UTSA. I also direct the Master in Data Analytics program, and I also run the Critical Technology Studies program, which prepares students for a career in the intelligence community. So we're going to do sort of a reprise of my 50th anniversary Scholar Speaker Series. People liked it, and so tonight I'm going to talk about humans and digital technology. I'm a Stanford-trained social psychology psychologist, so hopefully maybe you'll learn something. Feel free, I guess we're going to take questions along the way and at the end. So if you have a question, feel free to put it into the little app, and they'll stop and they'll read it to me, and I'll try to answer it. So here we go. So why do people do malicious things on the internet? This also happens to be one of my favorite graphics. It's a pretty cool graphic for somebody who likes data analytics. But this is a pretty important question that people have tried to answer throughout the years, and often answered not very well. So today we're going to talk about the 6 motivations of malicious online acts and actors, the emergence of the civilian cyber warrior, changing relationship of nation states and the hacker community, and the emergence of a cyber terror community. So those are sort of the main events. Let's go ahead and start out. So we're going to do this in 3 different levels. We're going to start out at a micro level and talk about psychological or social psychological forces. And then we're going to move to a meso level. We're going to talk about sort of group dynamics and malicious online actors. And then finally, we'll spend just a little bit of time at a macro level talking about similar things. So let's start out with micro level social psychological and psychological forces. So when you think about it, there are actually about 6 motivations for malicious online actors. And if you, let's see, I don't know, if you spell them out, money, ego, entertainment, cause, entrance to social group, and status, they spell MEECES, right? There was the old Pixie Dixie cartoon, and maybe with Tom and Jerry, the cat would chase the mice. The cat would say, "I hate MEECES to pieces." MEECES is actually a play off the old FBI counterintelligence term, MICE, which stood for the motivations for a person to betray their country, which was money, ideology, compromise, and ego. So let's find out more about MEECES. Like I said, money, ego, entrance to social group, cause, entertainment, and status. And we're going to take just a couple of minutes with each one of these motivations. So we're going to start with money. So money, individuals that if you find a group, find somebody who's motivated by money, they often belong to a hacking group that where other people share that similar motivation. There's really been an emergence in the last couple decades of currencies in use online. The stolen credit cards and bank accounts, root ownership of compromised machines is another currency. elegantly written exploits. Those work as a currency online. Virtual assets like Chinese QQ coins and other stuff. Secret data seems to be one that's been popular in the last few years. And then Bitcoin and other digital currencies. And why money? Well, interestingly enough, money has a powerful effect on social structure and social relations. And in fact, there's this fabulous book by Maurer called The Anthropology of Money. And what it talks about is basically if you introduce money into a culture that hasn't really, where there really hasn't been a money motivation before, and we see this sort of in the early hacker community, what happens is that it just basically sort of blows that community apart. The norms and the values, the social structure, it just kind of crumbles. It makes a big mess of it. But pretty interesting book if you're interested. Money also acts as a force to attract outsiders. So pretty soon you get Russian organized crime interested in the hacking community and malicious online acts and actors because there's money to be had. And these outsiders, the organized crime or whoever it happens to be who are not in the hacking community, this is one way for them to get power and prestige in the hacking community by basically using money as a currency. Ego is the next motivation for malicious online act or actor. And basically, in ego, it's basically overcoming technical obstacles online, creating code that is elegant and innovative. You're sort of the feeling of mastery over the machine. I made it do something it wasn't supposed to do. Besting a nation state is also a motivation. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a motivation for people, malicious actors. It's also to some extent a motivation for people doing, good stuff with computers and digital technology. So that's something that's sort of shared. Entertainment is the next one. So basically, in the really very early days of the hacking community, hackers were real pranksters. They loved pulling practical jokes on people, all sorts of things. And then, so a couple decades, that entertainment just kind of went quiet. And then in the last, say decade or so, 7, 8, 9 years, entertainment has returned as a motivation for malicious online acts. And part of that reason is now there's an infusion of less technical individuals in the digital space. You have a lot of newbies, a lot of non-technical people, a lot of soft targets. There's also expanded social environments in digital space, like Second Life, the opportunity to go in there and wreak a lot of havoc. And also, this sort of encourages the emergence of archetypes like griefers, who basically generate lulls, that is, generating psychological trauma as a form of entertainment for themselves. The next motivation is cause. Potentially the most serious security threat. You basically, the most common instance is hacktivism, which was coined by the cultivated cow, the use of the internet to promote a particular political, scientific, cultural, economic, or social cause. And this is probably the most serious threat to national security. So this is one that you see often. And there are a lot of different levels of actions that someone who's motivated by cause may do. Something like web defacement, theft of sensitive documents, all the way up to something like attacks on critical infrastructure. And it's, cause is basically the most traditional cause for both terrorism and our new phenomena, cyber terrorism. Entrance to social group. So you can't just walk up to a hacking group and say, hey, you guys are cool, can I join you? It's probably not going to work so well. However, if you write an elegant piece of code, write an elegant exploit, for example, and show it to them, and they look at it and go, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah, it looks like you've got some reasonable chops. So, okay, we'll take this exploit and do some kind of cool stuff with it. And, you know, welcome to the group. Welcome to the hacking community gang. So, hacking groups tend to be rather status homogeneous. That is, they typically have similar levels of expertise, but often in different areas. One guy will have, you know, operating system kernel experience, and then someone else has got networking experience, someone else maybe hardware experience, etc. And this may also be the case for cyber terror groups, and we'll talk a little more about cyber terror groups in a bit. So it really sort of says, hey, look, there's a certain level of expertise necessary to join something, and using elegant code and exploits to do that. And we're down to, I think, the last of the 6 motivations, status. And if you look at the hacking community, if you look at the community out there in general, the hacking community is really a very strong meritocracy. That is, the status that you have, the power and prestige that you have is really a very close connection to the level of skill that you have in coding or hardware or whatever it happens to be. And that's whether it's at a local level within your local hacking group, a regional level, national level, or international level. And it's a very, you know, powerful traditional motivation. And very likely emerging, that status will be something that is going to be emerging in the cyber terror community that we'll talk about once again. And the cyber terror acts that they pull off prove status within the community. So now we've done the 6 motivations of online malicious actors. So anytime you see a malicious act, pretty much you can pin the primary motivation for that act on one of these 6 motivations. Want to know more? I've written a number of journals, book chapters, co-authored a couple of books, and you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, if you're interested in knowing more about this particular topic, here's a chapter in a book that I wrote some time back. And this MEECES taxonomy, by the way, is in use by federal law enforcement, by the intelligence community, and things like that. So it's been pretty popular. So let's talk about another phenomena at the micro level before we move on, and that's the emergence of the civilian cyber warrior. So what's interesting is there's been a shift in environmental factors. In the bad old days, let me tell this 90-second story. In the bad old days, if you were a citizen of country A and country B did something that basically hurt the citizens of country A, what would you do? Well, you might write a letter to the president of country B and say, you're a bad person, don't do that again. Effective? Nah, not really. So you go, okay, I'm going to go down to the country B's embassy and protest. And so you and your friends go down to country B's embassy and protest. And what does it get you? Yeah, probably a billy club over the head and a night in jail. Nah, not that effective. So then you say, you know what? I'm going to go to country B and I'm going to blow a building up. And so you take all of your personal savings out of the bank and you fly to country B and you try to gather some explosives and find a target, et cetera, like that. And so the problem is what's really likely to happen is either one, you get identified and apprehended before you can commit the act, or two, in preparation to do the act, you blow yourself up. There's a good possibility. Even if you manage to take down a building, for example, kill a couple thousand people, you know, in the US, there are 330 million people. There's a lot more people to go. So now enters the internet. And so for the first time probably in history, an individual can effectively attack a nation state. And by effective, I mean you have a reasonably high probability of success. It doesn't take very much in terms of resources. You can use a really crappy old computers, doesn't really matter. There is a lot of information on the internet that can help you out, and there are people that could join you on the internet. It's a good way to sort of put a group together. And so basically what's happened is the internet has actually shifted the power relationship between individuals and nation states. In the bad old days, basically nation states held all the power, and an individual who went up against a nation state basically got stepped on like Bambi. But now you could, an individual could effectively attack a nation state from their bedroom in their PJs, and they have a much better chance of doing it, a much better chance of inflicting a lot of damage. So it's really shifted psychologically, this relationship between people and nation states. Oh, here we are. Lower probability of apprehension, higher probability of success, low cost of developing attacks, order of magnitude increase in potential damage. Yep. So all those things have actually shifted that power relationship. So some colleagues and I did this 2015 transnational study. It's, as far as I know, the only unclassified study of this kind, transnational study of this kind, looking at students in the US, Taiwan, and South Africa, and looking at motivations or sort of like how willing were they to commit a terrorist act, and at what level. A little bit of damage, a lot of damage, everything from like, oh, I'll do nothing, to like, oh, I'll deface a website, to down here at the bottom, oh, I'll attack a nuclear reactor and basically cause a radiation spill. And so we looked at both traditional kinetic terrorist attacks, things that go boom, and cyber attacks. And it turned out to be a really fascinating study, and a lot more complex than we initially figured. That is, so for example, the more time a person spent online and the more past software privacy acts they committed, those things were positively correlated with a willingness to engage in a cyber attack, for example. We then produced a lot more multivariate models, and we discovered how much more complex this relationship was, intention to commit a cyber terror or terrorist attack. We came up with 3 different models: a sort of a cybercrime model, a traditional, more criminological model, a political model that talked more about cause and political motivations, and then we tried to stick them together. And we found things like outgroup antagonism positively correlated with willingness to commit a cyber terror act. So outgroup antagonism is sort of like, oh, we belong to this group, you belong to that group, you're not really part of our group, we're going to attack you. Okay. Ineffective law enforcement in response to cybercrime, that was positively correlated to willingness to attack a military server, as was outgroup antagonism, as willingness to commit a physical terrorist attack as well. An actual kinetic attack was correlated quite highly with the willingness to commit a cyber attack. So they're sort of 2 things that, let's see, it looks like, oh yeah. So yeah, that's what I just said, that the willingness to commit a cyber terror act really strongly correlated the willingness to commit a physical attack. And so there's sort of a good news, bad news kind of moral of the story or result that came out of this pretty unique study. And so the good news is that although we didn't have a representative sample, that's pretty much impossible to get. If you figure it out, the good news is only about 1.5% of the people in the study basically opted for a severe cyber attack. The bad news is that there are 16 million college students in the US. And so 1.5% of 16 million is a lot of people that you still have to keep an eye on. So that was sort of the good and bad news component of this study. And if you want to know more about this, here's exploring the behavioral and attitudinal correlates of civilian cyber attacks. You can go read up about that there and learn more about this research study. Okay, time to do some meso level. We're going to now move from psychological or social psychological level. We're going to move up into the meso level or sort of group dynamics. So some colleagues and I examined social dynamics and Russian cybercrime networks. We actually examined networks of Russian hacking gangs. We had native Russian speakers to help us translate stuff. And we started putting together social network analysis of these groups. And there were 8 of them: Damage Lab, Hell Knights, Hackzona, Mazafaka, RU-Hack, Zloy, BH Crew, and Cup. And then we studied their friendship and communication ties. And we basically came up first with this graph. And this shows you sort of the connection between the Russian hacking gangs. If there's a really thick line, say from Damage Lab to Hell Knights, that means there's a very strong sort of friendship and communications bond between those groups. And if there's a thin line, like between, say, Hell Knights and BH Crew, that means that there's a very weak sort of friendship and communications network between those 2 hacking groups. And one of the interesting things that we found is that there were actors within each of these hacking groups, a couple of them, 1 or 2, each one, who basically had membership in multiple groups, more than one, and they served as kind of a bridge between these particular groups. That was pretty cool and interesting. Now here's another sort of interesting thing. We looked at individual actors or gang members in each of these Russian gangs, and we rated them by threat level from 0, which were basically pretty much script kiddies, so the little white dots are script kiddies, all the way up to 3, which was red, which were the serious threat actors. And what we discovered was that there are 2 sort of configurations of threat actors. There are the ones over here on the right where you see these 3 dots in red, and those are serious threat actors embedded in a very dense social network, lots of friends, lots of communications to lots of people, etc. But the folks you really should be afraid of, scared of, are these 4 red dots out here on the periphery. You can see that they don't have very many friendship connections. They don't have very many communications channels to other people. They're probably practicing operational security, and those are the folks that should scare you. You want to know more about this? Here's another article examining social networks of malware writers and hackers. It's out there actually online on the internet, the International Journal of Cybercriminology. So next, I'm going to talk about the 4 stages of non-nation state actor nation state relationships. That is, what we've seen in recent years is individual hackers as well as hacking groups have sort of developed relationships with nation states. And often these relationships are cemented with the nation state's security services, their intelligence services. And what I've proposed or hypothesized is that there are 4 stages to this relationship. How it forms all the way through how it disintegrates. So let's look at the first stage. The first stage, stage 1, is the nation state and non-nation state actors sort of notice each other. They may notice them because the nation state's looking at attributions of recent attacks. They've been identified through ongoing investigations. And of course, informal contact through hacking cons, right? So for example, at DEF CON, it's estimated about 10% of the folks wandering through DEF CON are our federal employees, both sort of overt with their bright, shiny wingtip shoes, and covert, with their long hair and t-shirts. And then also networked relationships with insiders. So someone who's inside an intelligence service for a nation state may say, hey, I know this really good guy. He works with this particular hacking group, and he'd be a really good person to sort of like bring on board. Okay. Stage 2. Motivations to collaborate with the nation state. So why would this individual or hacking group want to collaborate? The first one, and the common one, is nationalism and patriotism. That is the person associated with the security services for a nation state may come to the person and say, hey, would you like to do something for your country? Are you a true patriot? Do something for France, So basically, nationalism and patriotism, getting to recruit the hacker or hacking group. Enhanced legitimacy from covert association with state security services. Oh, those guys, that hacking group, they're really cool. They know the FSB, or they get money from the CIA, or things like that. So there's a motivation. The third is false flag. And so, for example, say this French citizen hacker is approached by someone and says, are you a patriotic Frenchman? He goes, yeah. I said, well, you want to do something for France? I said, yeah, okay. Well, just, extract these documents and you will help your country. And so you extract the documents and give them over to this person who happens not to work for France, but actually works for Russia, so-called false flag, right? And then finally, the last one is traditional and non-traditional coercion. You see a lot of that in the Russian Federation. And so it's sort of like this guy comes up to Ivan the hacker, and says, hey, how you doing? I said, oh, okay. He says, how's your sister? How's she doing? How's her health? I said, well, Svetlana, her health is fine. And the guy goes, well, Ivan, do you want Svetlana's health to stay fine? Then I want you to move money from bank A to bank B. So that kind of stuff actually goes on reasonably often. And that's a motivation to collaborate with security services with the nation state. Let's move on to stage 3 out of the 4. Now we maintain the relationship's been established, and now we want to maintain that relationship. And so how do you maintain it? Well, the nation state may do something like, say, provide immunity from prosecution for assistantship. So the nation state guy may say, yeah, hey, you know what? I know what you're doing is illegal for us, but don't worry, we're not going to prosecute you. You're immune. You're doing great things for our country. You're good. A second way that it's maintained is the nation state may ignore unrelated quasi-legal or legal activities. So the nation state guy goes, well, I know the boys, they're stealing credit cards and bank credentials and stuff. We're just going to sort of look the other way and just let them do their thing. A third way to maintain this relationship between the nation state and the non-nation state actors is resource assistance. Like you'll provide them with hardware, with servers, with software, with all sorts of stuff, even maybe some cash. The next one is ongoing grooming of high status individuals. So you'll find out who's sort of the semi-leader in the group, and you'll go to them and say, hey, Ralph, you're a cool dude. You're an amazing leader. You and your team are doing really great stuff. You really have great leadership skills, and you're really good at getting people to motivated to do stuff. So you groom that individual to basically continue doing what they're doing. And finally, there's the old coercion, how's your sister's health kind of thing. That's still in there. Now, finally, we get to the last stage of the relationship where the relationship dissolves. And there are a number of ways that might happen. One is by the collapse of the covert nature of the relationship. That is, oh, you guys were working for the undercover, working secretly for the CIA, and suddenly that knowledge becomes public knowledge, and other nation states discover this. And so the nation state may say, hey, you know what, it was good, but now everybody knows you're working for us, so we're going to have to terminate the relationship. Another way that this happens is that they come to the nation state comes to the hacking group and says, hey, look, hey, Fuzzy Bear, you guys have been really good. You've done good stuff, but we found this other group, Energetic Bear, and they're a lot more skilled and they know a lot more stuff. And so we're going to work with them instead. We're going to terminate your relationship. The third one, which happens fairly common, is scapegoating and prosecution. So they go to them and say, hey, I know we told you that we weren't going to prosecute you and you were safe and you weren't going to get into legal trouble, but my boss, they're really pushing him to basically make some arrests, and so I'm afraid you're next up. Yep. And then the most interesting one is the last one. The non-nation state actors or group of actors terminate the relationship themselves. And that sort of leads to some interesting potential consequences. So first of all, if you're interested in knowing more about this, the evolving nature of nation state malicious online actor relationships, there's a reference for you. And so here's this one unusual but interesting outcome where the hackers say goodbye to the government. And they may do that because they now have more increased skill, and they may actually be a potential threat to the former sponsor. That is sort of like, you see the stories in the news about, oh, this person found this poor tiny lion cub and it was sickly and weak and not doing well, and they took it home and they took care of it and raised it, and then one day it turns into an 800-pound lion and it bites your arm off. So basically, that's the same principle here. Also, the hacking group, their crime proceeds have been financing more technology, growth, money to the people. It's like, we don't need the nation state anymore. We're doing good. And then the other thing is, one of the things that may happen is that this hacking group may spin off and transform and morph into a domestic terrorist group or cyber terrorist group. And so that is probably one of the most serious and concerning outcomes that might happen from this final stage. Yep, there we go. Utilize cyberspace to attack their own homeland. So we're on the last and final and short, we're almost done. Short macro level forces. So journey across 3 epochs. I've been studying people in digital technology for over 2 decades. And basically there were, as I studied them and I sort of applied social movement theory to this, discovered that you could put the evolution of the relationship between people and digital technology, especially the hacking movement, into a couple of stages. And the first stage is sort of the hacking movement itself. That's the first epoch that happened. But what happened is eventually, what happened was the injection of money. That is, as hackers suddenly discovered, oh, I've been doing all this stuff for free, but IBM, they'll pay me, $60,000, which was a lot of money back then, to do the stuff I'm doing for free. I'm going to go do that. And they sort of age out. They find a spouse, they have kids, a house, a dog, a picket fence, etc. But the other group goes, oh, I could take these skills, money, and I could hack banks and credit card companies and stuff, and I could make money that way. And so part of the group went off that way, and that's where the second epoch, epoch 2, the cybercrime movement. And that's actually currently where we are now. We're sort of at we're headed towards the apex of this movement. We're getting, going up and up and up. The hacking movement, it's sort of gone downish. The cybercrime movement is going up. And then the question became, oh, well, what's Epoch 3? After 2 comes 3. What's there? And so after looking at a lot of the social science literature, or social movement literature, and things like that, basically, I think there's a significant chance that Epoch 3, which may be 5 or 10 years down the road, probably more like 10, is a cyber terror movement, and the emergence of a cyber terror movement. And that's actually pretty bad news. And so it's important to try and peer into the future from a national security perspective. But because if you have an idea of different scenarios that might emerge, like, oh, there might be this cyber terror movement, you can then move resources, policymakers can move resources into areas that can help you sort of prepare for that potential scenario. And so what we've seen is basically 3 epochs. Epoch 1, the hacking movement and community, it's mature. Epoch 2, the cybercrime and movement and community, it's emergent. And Epoch 3, which is the cyber terror and community movement, it's gestating. So if you want to know more, I wrote a book chapter that's in a book published by the Army War College. You can go take a look at that. There's a reference for it. And so finally, what you've learned, hopefully, in these few minutes is the 6 motivations of malicious online acts and actors, the emergence of a civilian cyber warrior, the changing relationship of nation states and the hacker community, and the potential emergence of a cyber terror community. And so what I really want you to remember at the end is that somewhere upstream in the kill chain, there's a human. And understanding the motivations and objectives and emotions and the group dynamics of that human can help you understand and help you predict and help you prevent malicious online acts. And that's it. I'll unscreen share somehow. Oh, here we are. Stop. And I'm back. Hopefully, I'm just about on the money, time-wise. Christopher, yeah. I do okay? We're good?
Yeah, no, doing great. So I don't see that we got any questions in. Honestly, like I didn't really have too many. You really covered everything pretty nicely and pretty clearly. I was kind of wondering, do you have any thoughts, or are you looking into how to actually go about preventing people from moving into cybercrime and cyber terrorism?
There are methods to do that, and they're actually being actively pursued. I know by the British for sure, because I talked to somebody over there in the security services. They're quite upfront about doing things like creating conflict within hacking groups to basically blow them apart, and things like that. The U.S., I don't think will own up to that, but I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think, I noticed you were kind of saying, I don't know, you as you were talking through the kind of pros and like the things that happen in these whole, these cycles, or the onboarding and deboarding of hackers for nation states, like, is that kind of just education, I guess, would you say is another means by which to dissuade people from going that route?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, a number of folks from the hacking community are basically in college. A lot of them are college students. And in fact, they're getting a lot of skills in college. And in fact, the security services are trolling the universities looking for these folks. So yeah, education is actually probably a positive kind of factor here.
Interesting. Okay. Actually, we did get a couple of questions, and somebody asked, have you ever had a direct interview with a known hacker?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, is that like an anonymous kind of situation, or do they expose themselves for you to?
it depends on the person. I try, because I'm an academic, I can sort of have some neutral territory of sorts.
Okay.
So sometimes I can actually gain rapport with the hacking group, because I'll go to the hacking conferences, I'll speak at the hacking conferences, I'll hang out in the lock picking room and all sorts of things. And so I'll gain some rapport, and I'll talk to people. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. There was another question. I guess you kind of started to go down that route. What they wanted to know, what is DEF CON?
Oh my God, DEF CON, the largest hacking conference in the world. About 30,000 people descend upon Las Vegas in the middle of the summer heat. And basically there are, probably over 100 events or talks. There's a Capture the Flag event, there's Spot the Fed event, there's it's pretty amazing. If you're interested in learning more and meeting lots of smart, interesting people, that's a good place to go. Now, it's a lot different than it used to be. I started going many, many years ago when it was a lot crazier and wilder. And it's a lot tamer now. And in fact, was it a few years back, the director of the NSA came and talked, for example. And so, yeah, it's a lot different than it used to be, but it's still a pretty incredible experience. It's cheap. It's a couple $100, cash only, but and then you have to find some hotel room to crash in. But yeah, no, it's definitely a good experience. I recommend it.
Okay. So another question came in on writing your chapters. Did you mostly derive information and your insights from interviews, or just from personal experience?
It's a combination of things. It's a combination of field and participant observation, going to hacking cons and things. It's partially personal interviews with people. It's partially also theory, because I'm a social scientist. So theory is your most powerful weapon. And so you mix those combinations together, and that's how you gain insight. And I'm also, I'm a nerd. I've been doing stuff for actually now programming for 50 years. Long time.
All right. So I don't have any other questions coming in right now. So
Okay.
I don't know if there's any other closing words you wanted to offer, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure. So anyway, it's a really fascinating topic, and there are not very many of us social scientists that are also have technical ability to sort of understand the community and understand this. I really like pursuing this from a national security perspective, and work with NATO a lot overseas, and work with the U.S. government and the intelligence community as well. And it's actually just it's really fascinating. It's pretty cool. And if you're interested in a career in the intelligence community and sort of being a data analyst, check out the Critical Technology Studies program, CTSP. Just type CTSP, UTSA, got to put the plug in. And basically, we train you to be an analyst, and then we also have connections with the intelligence community so that it's a pretty fabulous way to serve your country.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So make sure I'm not missing anything. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I do want to remind everybody that we do have a, let me share the screen real quick. A feedback form. So if you want to go ahead and fill this out and let us know how today's meeting went for you, we love getting feedback so we can, continue to have a top quality content for everyone. But yeah, the QR code's there. And I want to thank you again, Dr. Kilger, for coming and speaking with us. Very interesting talk, and glad to have you.
Well, thanks, Christopher and Leah and company. So I really enjoyed it. I love doing this stuff, and I love talking to students. So drop me a line. Happy to chat.
Sure thing. All right, Zach, you want to take us off?